Good evening, Nigeria. Welcome to this very special event put together by China's television, an evening dedicated to unpacking the intricate dimensions of our nation's proposed tax reform bills. I'm Sean Kimale, I'm your moderator tonight, and we're just not reporting the news. We're engaging in a dialogue that seeks to illuminate the shadows of uncertainty surrounding these pivotal legislative measures. As we dive into this conversation, it is essential to recognize that taxation is not merely a financial obligation, it is a social contract, a reflection of our collective values and priorities as a nation. The promoters and drafters of the proposed reform say it is a promise to reshape the fiscal landscape of Nigeria, aiming to enhance revenue generation, stimulate economic growth, and ultimately uplift the living conditions of our teeming population. However, with these ambitions come questions, concerns, and indeed controversies. And tonight we'll hear from a diverse panel of experts, including economists, policymakers, lawmakers, and civil society representatives who are already in the room. They will be helping us to navigate the complexities of these bills in a situation that makes us look as though we are all fighting in the country for something that is so important and pivotal for our progress as a people. We aim to foster an environment of understanding and dialogue, addressing both the potential benefits and the apprehensions that have arisen in public discourse. Let's begin from the beginning. Let me let you understand a summary of what this bill is all about. A lot of people will be asking, what is this in essence? Let me give you an overview of what this bill is all about in the first place. They say that it's an act to repeal certain acts on taxation and consolidate the legal frameworks relating to taxation and enact the Nigeria Tax Act to provide for taxation of income transactions and instruments and for related matters. Some will say it's one of the oldest modern laws that we have in our country today. Now, there are four aspects to these bills. The first one, the Nigeria Tax Bill, which is meant to eliminate multiple taxation. The second is the Nigeria Tax Administration Bill, which stands to harmonize the tax processes across all levels of government. The third one is the Nigeria Revenue Tax Service Establishment Bill, seeks to rename the Federal Inland Revenue Service to Nigeria Revenue Service, and the Joint Revenue Board Establishment Bill, which is the creation of a Joint Revenue Board to streamline tax administration. These are the aspects of this bill. Of course, the objectives is very simple. They're to transform the nation's tax sector, making it more relevant to present time. So the highlights of the bill, a lot of things that have caused the discourse that we are trying to simplify and get Nigerians to understand better. Issues of VAT exclusions, 27.5% company income tax, 4% development levy on companies, 5% excise tax on lottery and gaming income, 5% telecom tax. There are a lot of issues in all of this. Let me give you a premise, a background of where we started from the very beginning. And I'll take you to August last year, when President Bola Tinubu inaugurated the Taiwo Oyedele Committee, the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms. I'll remind you what the President said. When I was listening to it again, it felt like the President was making that statement this morning. Take a listen to President Bola Tinubu.
In carrying out this mandate, the committee will be guided by national interest above all else. We cannot continue to tax the poor party where we should be promoting prosperity. We should no longer tax investment or production, but focus on returns, incomes, and consumption. This government will tax the fruit, but not the seeds. Our goal is to promote investment and facilitate economic growth as a sustainable way to grow and diversify government revenue. We will be mindful to ensure physical stability for all stakeholders, including investors and businesses, both domestic and foreign, as well as all tiers of government. All government agencies, ministry, departments are hereby directed to cooperate fully with the committee towards achieving their mandate. Finally, I wish to use this opportunity to seek the support of the National Assembly, the organized private sector, the international community, and above all, every well-meaning Nigerian citizen, if you are truly a citizen. This committee is on a crucial national assignment. The assignment is very critical to the physical health of our country and our collective survival. It is now our job to support the committee members to succeed. I am confident that with your support, the committee will achieve a remarkable outcome for our country. We know them. They are competent, qualified, and reliable. Your tax is not just for today, but you see the future. And the young lady that addressed us, I assure you, your future is assured.
President Bola Tinubu, last year, August, specifically the 8th of August. From there, the Taiwo Udele Committee, they set out, they were meeting, having consultations and touring all aspects of what will be important for their job. Several months later, they came up with directions on the way to go for the country, which is one of what has brought us here tonight, the tax reform bills. And then the very first pushback was from the northern leaders when they met in Kaduna. The governors and some northern religious leaders met and they gave a warning and a caution. And the governor of Gombe State was a man who read a communique. Take a listen to him.
Foreigners with dismay the content of the recent tax bill that was forwarded to the National Assembly. The contents of the bill are against the interests of the North and other subnationals, especially the proposed amendment to the distribution of value-added tax to the rebate-based model. This is because companies remit VAT using location of their headquarters and tax office, and not where the services and goods are consumed. In view of the foregoing, the forum unanimously rejects the proposed tax amendments and calls on members of the National Assembly to oppose any bill that can jeopardize the well-being of our people. For the avoidance of doubt, the Northern Governance Forum is not averse to any policies or programs that will ensure the growth and development of the country. However, the Forum calls for equity and fairness in the implementation of all national policies and programs.
The governor of Gombe said in Kaduna a few days afterward, the National Economic Council met in Abuja, and they met, and very similar to what the northern leaders said is what they agreed on. It was Governor Seyi Makinde of Oyo State who read out the communique and the position of NEC.
NEC noted the need for sufficient alignment between and amongst the stakeholders for the proposed reforms. So Council therefore recommend the need to withdraw the bill currently before the National Assembly on tax reforms so that we can have wider consultations and also build consensus around these reforms for the benefit of the entire country.
On the floor of the National Assembly, there is a very vocal lawmaker from Borno State, Senator Ali Ndume. On Politics Today on China's television, he said he will shoot down the bill. A few days later, on the floor of the National Assembly, he was very blunt and about how he thought things should go. Let me remind you of what he said.
The order of the business says, number 10, that our business for the day will be based on the order paper. The order paper does not contain this. And for God's sake, this is a very, very, very important matter. We should not in any way try to use the position of the Senate, because the order paper is clear and we have been doing this. I have no problem having them to come here and explain whatever. We have been doing that, but we follow known procedures. And that is, if today this thing has to be taken, you now quickly ask.
And that was Senator Ali Ndume. He wasn't the only one who spoke. But I mean, for someone who said he would shoot down the bill. Only yesterday, the governor of Borno State, Professor Babagana Zulum, is one of those who are saying, why the hurry in this bill? Take a listen to him.
On this tax issue, there's a lot of misconception. During the neck, we had the neck, and we advised federal government to force for a moment in order to have deeper consultations with stakeholders. We felt that the provision, VAT provision in the tax law, which clearly stated that VAT application should be based on derivation.
All right. There are impressions and there are a lot of controversies. One is the fact that is in northern Nigeria against the proposition as being pushed to the National Assembly. Are the states going to be shortchanged in all of this? Is there going to be the scrapping of Naseni and TETFON in this proposition? What is a problem about the issue of derivation? These are critical questions that have been raised in all of this. Tonight, we have the man who is behind the tax committee, and he has all of the explanations to make. And we have loads and loads of Nigerians in the room who are going to be posing the question on behalf of the millions of Nigerians tonight who are watching. When you say you have brought the matter in front of the man of the matter, this is what the case is tonight, and we're ready for the conversation. Are you ready, everyone? Let's get started, shall we? Well, when they set out to put reforms into our tax law system in Nigeria, we thought that where are we headed anyways? But let me allow Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, who is the chairman of the Presidential Committee on Tax and Fiscal Policy, to give us a few minutes of explanation. And tonight, I have very crucial 5 questions that I'm going to be asking on behalf of you who are watching at home, and people here are also going to be asking the question. After he speaks, I'll be also allowing the former Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Yakubu Dogara, to also speak on the dimension of the legislative framework that we should be expecting. All of this effort is to have the law that will make us all proud. Ladies and gentlemen, let's begin the conversation now. Let me invite Mr. Taiwo Oyedele to give us some few minutes to give a summary and explanation to the tax reforms bill. Mr. Oyedele.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for this important conversation we're having today. Like we said, Mr. President set up the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee August 2023 with a very clear mandate. Our economy is underperforming. We're not growing enough. Poverty is widespread. And we do not have inclusive and sustainable growth. And there can be what we call shared prosperity unless we address those issues. While we face a myriad of issues, the fiscal system, including taxation, clearly is one major area. And if I want to summarize it, I will say that the fiscal and tax system is like the knee on the neck of our economic prosperity as a people. It's important to state that the primary objective for these reforms is not to generate more revenue, because I see people get that wrong every time. It is to fix the economy in a way that there can be shared prosperity. If your businesses are growing, expanding within and outside the shores of this country, if our individuals are earning income and thriving, then taxes will be a natural consequence of that prosperity. That is really the fundamental objective of the reforms. So we know that the work we were asked to do for our country is such an enormous amount of work, but really very critical and important. If we were going to take all our time, we would have asked for about 4 or 5 years. We knew Nigeria has no luxury of time. We decided we should put in all our efforts to get this done within 1 year. And I can say to you, in that 1 year, we have over 100 members, including more than 40 students across 22 universities in Nigeria. We're represented by people from all the geopolitical zones, government institutions, private sector, trade organizations, and so on and so forth. We're working every single day. There were days that we're having meetings until late midnight, because you can see Nigerians who love their country, they're passionate about their country, and they can't wait for us to start fixing these problems. One of the deliverables of this work is the realization that we have tax laws that are very old and no longer fit for purpose, including those we inherited from our colonial masters. So we said we'll use the opportunity of this reform to rewrite those laws. So they are the laws made by Nigerians for Nigeria to be able to drive our prosperity going forward. And that's what led to the 4 bills that we have before the National Assembly today that Sheon had properly summarized. In terms of the benefits of those bills, I will quickly just read through them. So for households and individuals, including our young population, these bills are looking to exempt low-income earners completely from tax, those who earn about 83,000 naira per month or 1 million naira a year. It will reduce the PAYE for middle-income earners of about 1.7 million naira per month or below will pay less taxes. Combined, these two is reducing the tax burden on more than 90% of workers in both private and public sector. There will be 0% VAT, no VAT on food, more than 600 food items, on healthcare, on education. We do not want our people to have to decide between buying garri to give their kid and buying pencil or eraser for them to go to school. There will be 0% VAT on electricity generation and transmission, and there will be VAT exemption on transportation, on renewable energy, CNG, baby product, sanitary towels, rent, and fuel products. These items constitute more than 4 out of 5 consumption by the average household. If you go down the ladder of society, this is where they spend almost the entire money that they earn because they don't earn a lot. In other words, our most vulnerable and poorest citizens will not have to worry about VAT. But so we can balance the books. On non-essential items, that those of us who are not so poor tend to consume a lot, we are adjusting the VAT rate upward to partly compensate for what government will lose by granting exemption to the majority of consumption by our population. There will be tax break for wage award and transport subsidy to low-income earners. There will be tax incentive for the employers who create more employment so they can employ more people. There will be exemption of stamp duties on rent of about 10 million naira actually or less. There will be PAYE exemption on our armed forces who are fighting insecurity. There will be friendly rules for remote workers as well as digital nomads. We want Nigerians in Nigeria to get jobs within the international business process outsourcing so they can earn dollars while they stay here. They don't have to make that difficult choice of relocating abroad. There will also be clarity on taxation of digital assets, including how to avoid double taxation, and allowing people who play in that sector to get deduction when they make losses. For small businesses, there will be increase in tax exemption threshold. Currently, 25 million is exempt. We are moving that to 50 million, partly to recognize the devaluation and depreciation of the naira. There will be exemption of income tax for small businesses. They will pay 0% companies income tax. There will be exemption from withholding tax, also for small businesses. They don't have to charge withholding tax, neither do they have to deduct it on their vendors. There will be exemption for them in terms of deducting withholding tax from their vendors. They will not have to account for VAT when they invoice their customers. They will have the opportunity of simplified accounts that does not have to be audited to reduce the cost of doing business for them should they have to file returns. There will be the office of the tax ombudsman to protect these people when they are being harassed by tax officers. They cannot defend themselves. They do not have the money to afford lawyers. Neither can they go through the court process. They will be protected under these bills. Tax disputes escalated to the tax ombuds will be resolved within 14 days. Should the tax authority not cooperate, the law says that the dispute will be resolved in the favor of the taxpayer. There will be harmonization of taxes and repeal of multiple taxes, over 50 of them, placing burden on the most vulnerable small businesses and poor population. These bills plan to outlaw cash payments of taxes as well as physical roadblocks. We are in 2024. We should not have to put nails on wood and throw it on the road to collect taxes. We are more than that. We are better than that. There will be the opportunity for small businesses to formalize their businesses should they want to grow and scale, which is what we want for them. Today, the tax provisions discourages formalization because you are punished. You pay twice as much the tax. These bills are fixing that problem. For businesses and investments, these bills are proposing the reduction of companies' income tax rate from 30% to 25% over the next 2 years. It proposing harmonizing various earmarked taxes from education tax to engineering and science to information technology to police trust fund, and the list goes on, that businesses have to pay. When businesses have to pay almost more than 80% of their profit, it is not surprising that more businesses are not being set up. And those that were set up before are beginning to think twice, either exiting or scaling down their operations. These bills will introduce economic development incentive and priority sector for us to grow the sectors that are important to our economy so there can be shared prosperity. These bills will provide friendly tax regime for restructuring and reorganization of businesses. Today, if you have a group of companies and you decide to restructure them, you have to face huge tax bills in trying to make your businesses efficient. These bills would address that. There will be clarity that when you run your business, the taxman cannot just show up and say, we want to audit you for 15 years. Statute of limitation will be clearly stated, can only be exceeded where there is deliberate misstatement of your affairs. In other words, you need to be honest in your affairs. There will be faster refunds. Many companies today have billions of naira that is stuck with the tax authority. They cannot get the refund, and they're borrowing at 40% to run their businesses. That does not make sense. These bills will address that problem. We also have provisions for companies that need certainties to ask for requests for ruling from the tax authority, and for that response to be provided within 21 days. And if any new startup incur costs while they are starting to start up their business, any costs they incur within 6 years before they commence their business will be tax deductible, because we think that we should not punish them for taking the risk to want to start a business. This is one of the reasons why countries like the US is so successful. They support their investors, they support their entrepreneurs to take risks, and when those people succeed, the country can then share out of it. That was why Mr. President said during the inauguration, we will stop taxing capital. We will not tax investment. We do not want to tax production. We do not want to tax poverty. Of course, we do not want to tax seed. We will wait, invest with the Nigerian people, and tax the fruits. If you borrow to run your business, you will no longer be punished, except you borrow from a related party and the terms are suspicious. For the sub-national government, what do we have in these bills for them? The federal government will give 5% of its share of VAT revenue to states. The federal government has also agreed that electronic money transfer that is being shared today between federal, state, and local government should go to the state 100%. It's also in the bills. This bill will repeal the old stamp duty law of 1939 before Nigeria got independence and introduce a new stamp duty law that is broad-based, easy to collect, and all the revenue coming from that will go to the state 100%. These bills also assign the taxing right for limited liability partnership to go to the state, not the federal government, giving them more resources to run the affairs of the subnational. These bills will also allow states to enjoy tax exemption should they issue bonds. Today, federal government bond is tax exempt. State government bond is not tax exempt. These bills are trying to correct that inequity. We must recognize that this is a federation and we must empower the subnational. A more equitable formula for sharing VAT to recognize where the income is, where the consumption takes place, and so on and so forth. I know that Shim is trying to remind me my time is up. We had an engagement with tax professionals and CFOs. These are the most knowledgeable stakeholders we have because they deal with these issues. After our engagement with them, where we had over 3,000 online and offline, guess what? For all the participants that participated in person, the approval rate is 100%. For those who participate online, watching the recorded session, 92%. For those who did not participate at all, but have been reading what we have been putting out, approval rate is 76%. Overall, Nigerians who support these reforms holistically are over 90%. And the areas where we have disputes, conversations, controversies, are the issues we can iron out. These bills have more than 200 transformative provisions to fix our country and set us on the right path to prosperity. We should not allow one or two provisions that we can easily discuss and agree on to become the pain or the bottleneck. So thank you very much.
All right, this man, if you allow him, he can spend 5 hours to explain these bills. But the reason why we are here is to pose some of the questions to him. Now, we're going to actually hit the nail on the head, but there is one angle to it. It says, Mr. Oyedele, are you and your committee against the North? We have another leader here. It's a former Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Yakubu Dogara. He's going to give us a keynote speech for about 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening. First of all, I will start my intervention by thanking Mr. Sheun for inviting me to participate in this town hall. Before now, I thought that we have flurry of experts, both in leadership positions and in the National Assembly, so issues of taxation shouldn't be this complex and obfuscating to a point where we will be stuck in a binge-watching rut that we're presently under. So when I got that invitation, I did tell him, I'm not going to participate. I need to see the bills myself because I want to be 100% convinced of what I will say. So they quickly dispatched the bills to me, and I have them there. I have studied these bills, the two most important bills. The other two are establishment bills. And I don't intend to speak to the details because we have heard from Mr. Taiwo, who chaired the committee that produced this wonderful piece of legislation that's before the National Assembly. I've been in the National Assembly for 16 years, and I must say that I've seen very few bills that can be compared to the bills they produce in terms of quality, the originality of thought, and in terms of effect that we will have on our larger economic ecosystem. Having done that, I still, as a representative that I am, I thought that it's not even good enough for me to just come here and present my opinion. So I summoned some of my brothers, leaders in their own right, across all sectors. Most of them, almost all of them northerners like me, to say, come, let's look at this thing dispassionately. What is the problem? What are people complaining about? And honestly speaking, I don't begrudge noise in a democracy. As a matter of fact, the more noise your democracy generates, the more functional it is. The only problem is if you allow the noise to degenerate into violence, that is where you have a problem. And then we sit down and look at some of these major objections that are coming from across some of our leaders in the north and some of our brothers. So I wouldn't say I'm an expert. I'm here as a student. I want to learn. But because I've studied this, nothing precludes me from saying my opinion. As a matter of fact, the moment they announced, was it yesterday or the day before yesterday, that I'll be participating in this discussion, my phone almost broke. So many pleaded with me. That was why I knew how important this is. Some were even pleading with me not to even show up. I said, no, but that's not leadership. Even if I disagree, I should go there and tell them that I disagree. So let's look at some of these objections that have been raised. I will address the question of leadership. And my appeal to all of us here, we are all leaders. We should remove the cap of regionalism, the cap of sectionalism, cap of religion, and put on the cap of leadership. Because that is what will resolve the current problems that we have. I think one of the major objections relates to issue of timing. I've had this even from leaders that I respect. But in leadership, when you talk about timing, the way I have heard them talk about is a tragic misconception of the notion of time itself. Because there's nothing like future, there's nothing like the past. All we have is now, now, now. It is what you're doing now that will become your past. It is what you're doing now that will affect your future. It was Dr. King who told us that time is neutral. And without creative use of time, time itself becomes an ally of the primitive forces of social stagnation. So the answer he gave was to say that the time is always ripe to do right. So the question before us as leaders is not to look at what the president is doing, what our leader here, Taiwan's committee have produced. I don't even care if it was part of the president's agenda. All I am bothered with as a leader is it the right thing? Then if we come to the conclusion that it is the right thing for us to do, then the time to do it is now, not tomorrow. So I will resolve that issue the way I have resolved it. Secondly, I've heard about insufficient consultation. I've heard even legislators speaking as if they are spokesperson for some governors' forum or some others, instead of looking at what is right and providing solutions. Now, I don't know, he didn't address some of these issues, but I believe in the course of our interface, he will address them, whether there was enough consultation with the governors. But I want to say this, at the state level, how many people do governors consult when they are making laws? I'm not challenging them. As a matter of fact, in some cases, state laws are written from the living rooms of governors. But the truth is, we were warned long ago by Shakespeare in his famous work, Pericles, the Prince of Tyre. He said, few are those who like to hear about the sin they love to act. So should we now stop because governors have not been brought on board, even though it is the right thing to do? Should that be an excuse, really? The answer to my mind is no. Then they talk about popularity. Oh, the bill is not popular. I want to tell this audience that what has defined us as humans, what has given us superiority as humans, most of them were not popular. Talk about the discovery of controlled fire from Homo erectus. That is what distinguishes us as human and conferred on us superiority over all other creations. But before the discovery of fire, human being was number 6 on the food chain. If you had made an elephant, not an elephant, a lion with a prey, would you dare go near it? So chances were that before fire was discovered, when a lion kills its prey, it will let it go. Even hyenas will come and eat. Jackals will come and feed on them. As a human being, if you had run across baboons, you will run away. But it was fire that gave us the power to scare them away. Everything that we have here is on account of controlled fire. That is what conferred on us superiority. But if you go back to history, student of history will tell you that the idea itself of fire wasn't popular. That is the point I'm driving at. In mythology, it was said it was even one of the gods that rebelled against the Olympian gods and handed fire to man. It was out of rebellion. But now we exercise dominion based on that. Look at J.F. Kennedy, for instance. The idea to land the man on the moon wasn't popular in the US. If I was born and had listened to people like my hero, Martin Luther King Jr., I would have opposed him. Because he clearly told him, why bother spending $20 billion sending the man to the moon while you can use this money to put God's creation, man, on his 2 feet? These were moral arguments. But if JFK were alive today, to see what that 20 billion he invested in putting man on the moon has done for us. Even some of these communications, some people are using internet, is on account of the satellites that are there. But it wasn't a popular decision. Time will fail me to mention about Galileo, for instance. He died in detention for proposing that the earth was round, as against the church's teaching then that the earth was flat. But until much later, even after his death, that they discovered that he was actually right. So leaders that will make impact bother about doing what is right. If it is popular, excellent. If it is not popular, just do what is right. I move to the third objection. They have spoken about increment in VAT. I believe we will be challenged about that. Well, I don't want to say that Taiwo is perfect. I don't want to say that the president who has transmitted this bill to the National Assembly is perfect. Because perfection is an attribute of God. And no human being was ever built to receive worship. Once you begin to ascribe perfection to a human being, you are setting him up for destruction. So I agree that as lofty as the ideas are, as wonderful as the provisions of these bills are, the way he has illuminated them here, there may still be problems. There may still be problems with the bill. And of course, some have pointed it out. They don't want VAT to be raised progressively to 15%. That, of course, can be discussed. If we put on the cap of leadership, we can discuss that. It shouldn't be that because of that, the bill cannot pass. One, they have talked about the distribution formula, which is the major thing orchestrating all the cries, especially in our region here in the north. I'm a northerner. As long as you are attributing this to the locations where these goods are consumed and not where the headquarters of the companies producing these goods are located, I'm 100% for it. You know why? Because whether we like it or not, the discussion about economic justice will not end today. So we as Northerners, we should better embrace this opportunity to create wealth, to build our people so that we can generate wealth and ensure prosperity for our people. I know that it is difficult, but it was what John Huntsman Senior reminded us, that humans have seldom created anything of lasting value if they were not tired or hurting. So if this will get us tired as Northerners to begin to do something else and not look up onto government, if this thing can get us hurting to begin to look inwards so that we can generate wealth. After all, our fathers did it. The granite pyramids, the cotton ginneries, the multiplicity of cows, herds of cows that we have.
All right.
At a point, federal government was even borrowing money from northern region. Why can't we repeat this? And lastly, there are so many other issues. So they have said, okay, the word derivation is not defined in the Act. I said, okay, if that's the case, you have a legitimate argument. Let's define it. But it shouldn't stop work on these bills before the National Assembly. And lastly, I want to talk to my brothers in the North. I don't think this is the time for us to begin to condemn the president and to begin to say that on account of these bills, he's anti-North. Because I want to remind us that the president has done something that is significant. And in my lifetime, if he can pursue this to the end, it will be that there's no northern leader of my lifetime that has done what the president has done for the North. And I will tell you, it's the creation of the livestock ministry. This is the global business around that. The global market size of dairies, of beef, in the next 3 years will rise to about $2.5 trillion. You can Google it. So if in the North we're able to organize ourselves in such a way that we can corner just 5% of this global market size of dairies and beef, I tell you, that gives us $250 billion. We don't need VAT from any state in Nigeria to survive. The North can survive for this one. We are the most endowed part of Nigeria. And don't joke about it. If you doubt, find out from Australia how much they are raking from just mining minerals. There's gold everywhere in the North. We have all the resources. We can survive. Thank you, and God bless you.
You're going to be in trouble if you have very vocal speakers, especially on these very interesting conversations. You could allow Yakubu Dogara to speak on and on. He's a lawyer, he's a parliamentarian. But ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for you in the room to speak. But we'll do that when we return from this break, everyone. Join us again. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. It's the special town hall on tax reform bills. If you look at the stage, if you put us on a long shot, the stage is set, the panelists are set, and we're going to be having some robust conversations. Some of the most beautiful minds in this country are in the room. Let me introduce you to the panelists. I have joining us an economist, Dr. Paul Alaje. Thanks so much indeed for joining us on this very important conversation. So much, and also I have joining us Mr. Chibuzo Michael. Thanks so much for coming. And we have Mr. Baba Yusuf. Thank you so much, Mr. Baba Yusuf. And of course, Mr. Taiwo Yedele, who introduced earlier, and the former Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Yakubu Dogara. Now, before we get started, and I want us to clear the air, I'd like to give a minute each to the rest of the panelists that we have not heard from tonight, to give their general overview. No holds barred. That's the conversation tonight, because we need to resolve those differences in this room tonight. Do we agree? Yeah. Those differences must be resolved in this room tonight. And we start with Dr. Paul Alaje. Just 60 seconds before we start the ball rolling.
Yeah, thank you so very much for having me, and good evening to Nigerians. For me, I think that we've made a remarkable progress in putting this bill together. And like the honorable, distinguished honorable has said, the former Speaker of the House of Representatives have said, it might not be 100%, but I don't think we should throw away the baby and the bathwater. If there are things that needs to be corrected, to my mind, I will mention a few of them, what we might just need to adjust. A lot of work has gone into this bill. I remember that I was privileged to attend 2 of the meetings, and the way conversation went, for people that know me all around the country, I like to be very frank, to be on point, and to speak to the issues directly. So I never seen where a part of the country there's been orchestration to sideline or to negate. But I want to speak to the key issues. A lot have been mentioned by the chairman of the committee, and I think, if anything, it deserves to be recommended. However, as my professional opinion are the following. Number one, the issue of VAT. I think we might need to think about VAT going to 15% in medium term. To my mind, 7.5% VAT, I agree, is among the lowest. But when you look at our income capacity now, as a country, our GDP just lost 250% of its shares, from 400 billion to about 200 billion. No text to exchange rate. There's nothing the committee can do about that. Wonderful bill. 2, you look at what the committee has done. Before now, if tax authorities say, you have not done well, if you do well, who will you go to? Nobody. Now the committee has brought and is recommending an, what's it called? Yes, ombudsman that you can go to. And I think is a beautiful initiative. 3, I also look at the personal income tax. Unfortunately, I don't see many people talk about it. The personal income tax is recommending that payable amount in taxes will grow from 0% to 15%, 15 to 18%, 18 to 23%, 23, I think, to 25%. I am completely in alignment with the upper limit from 2018, 21, but I don't know if we can still do it. If you check the current arrangement, people that earn a bit above minimum wage, they are charged 7%, and I think it grows, I'm not sure whether it's now 11%. If we move anybody that earns above 67,000 naira, 1 naira extra, because the amount here is 800,000, 1 naira extra, you have to pay 15% on it. Maybe there will be provisions and all of those. Can we do it such that the burden, because these are the vulnerable, when we look at the poor of the poorest, and they earn, maybe they get a job of 80,000, minimum wage in Nigeria today is 70,000. If they get that kind of job, what can we do such that what they pay in taxes, especially personal income tax, to states, to my mind, how do we review it such that they are to a large extent protected? So instead of going to 15% directly, can we have a lower rate first for those who are earning less than 200, and I think it's 2.2 million additional before we get to the first 3 million. But apart from that, issue of VAT has been said. Honestly, my opinion about VAT is very different from the conversation that many people are having. I'll tell you, there are states that are issuing contracts and VAT is charged. The state that really wants to develop, maybe because they have the revenue, it first goes to covers. Then when it goes back, their own contract, they don't get back as such. Are we really encouraging development of those states already? And I think this is what this bill pretends to correct. Again, even if we don't agree with the VAT percentage, can we make some adjustment? Instead of saying we want to throw it away, I will give the bill a pass mark.
Like what?
A pass mark.
Over 10?
Over 10, maybe 7, 8. Okay. My reservation, which I believe can still be adjusted before it becomes law, is the issue of VAT going to 15%, because that in itself could discourage consumption. You know, VAT is charged on consumption. 7.5% is good. We're looking at 10% next year. We have economic crisis in our hands. So if you grow from 10% to 12.5%, then grow it to 15%, how can we become a bit drag? I don't know if you have more time. I can give you country scenarios, including Russia. That taxes were added to flotation. After that, it was added to subsidy removal. But at the end of the day, something else happened, the taxes were cut again. So that we have done a lot of work. This in-depth analysis we've done, the bill we've put to the National Assembly, I think it should be passed. If there will be need for tweaking, like the chairman said, 90% of Nigeria agree with it. We agree with it. But little reservations that people may have are things that can be brought forward instead of throwing it away altogether.
Thank you so much, Dr. Paul Alaje, for those submission. Mr. Chubuzo Michael is a public affairs analyst and a writer. I was particularly amazed by your write-up that I saw.
Thank you.
I looked for your number and I reached out to you. Could you give us your view about this? Can you summarize what you put in that piece?
Okay, I want to start by thanking the Taiwo committee. I think they did a very, very wonderful job. The moment the bills were presented to the National Assembly, I decided to do my own first reading, because one thing I discovered in this country is that most time we comment without knowing what we are commenting on. So that has been the major problem that I see around. So I shut down almost a day or two to go through the 4 bills, and I can tell you that I saw something that I believe will transform this country. Because over the years we've been having so many knee-jerk reactions to our fiscal problems. And remember, in 2019, we started using the finance bills and Finance Act to amend certain sections of our obsolete laws and taxation laws. So, but this particular bill, or this particular set of bills, are going to harmonize everything to make the tax administration very simple, make taxation very simple. I think in one of those, I think there was a particular presentation that the chairman made. He said that it is hard enough to pay tax. Why complicate the tax process? So the bills are first and foremost to harmonize so many of those tax laws, or update, modernize some of them, like the Stamp Duties Act that was enacted in 1939 or thereabouts. Even the VAT that we are talking about was enacted around 1993. But over time, we're now using a Finance Act of VAT modification to increase or reduce rates and all that. So at the end of the day, you realize that this is a very great opportunity for this country to remove all the cogs that has been militating against the wheel of progress. Now, I want to delve straight into the VAT issue, because basically that has been the major controversy as far as I'm concerned. Because once you see people saying oppose the bill, they always point to the VAT. And I want to say that it is a shame that, this year we are about to clock almost 6 trillion naira in VAT collection, if we are to go by what we have been generating monthly. And most of the time, you see that the states get the bulk of their revenues from VAT. That is part of the reason why some states feel very, very emotional about it. So, but 6 trillion naira in VAT is just less than $3.5 billion. As a country, we should be ashamed that we are haggling over a revenue that is just less than $4 billion. We have a revenue problem. Okay, just recently we are about to present a budget of 7.9 trillion naira to the National Assembly. If you do the conversion, you're talking about just $28 billion. South Africa has a budget of close to $300 and something billion. The Homeland Security Department in the US, just a department, is spending $176 billion. Now, the largest economy, or let's say the biggest country, black race in the world, is struggling to use $28 billion to provide social services. Remember, we have Lagos to Calabar, coastal road to talk about, Sokoto to Badagry, Lagos to Ibadan Railway, Abuja to... These are roads that, infrastructure that will require money, trillions of naira. Where do you get those money from? And people will not want us to borrow, because once you start borrowing too, because you have to fund these particular services. So it is very important that you first of all try to reorganize your revenue streams. Part of it is trying to make those businesses to the businesses that bring in the revenue, and then the individuals, and that is at the heart of these bills, individuals and businesses. Like he pointed out, for the personal income tax reforms, you are going to see almost 90% of Nigerians being exempt from tax. Why do I say 90% of Nigerians? Some people try to gloat over the fact that we have multidimensional poverty. We are the home to the largest number of poor people in the world. Now, the question is this. If we are home to the largest number of poor people in the world, it means that less than or more than 80% of our population actually don't earn up to £1 million annually. So if you exempt that section of the population from paying tax, that is massive.
All right. Let me go to Baba Yusuf. Thank you so very much. You look like you are representing the young demography of the nation. So we have a balanced distribution of panelists. Mr. Baba Yusuf is a group CEO, Global Investment and Trade Company. I also saw one of your intervention, which made me to call you.
Thank you.
So can you give us an understanding? Are you agreeing with Chibuzo in his own, he says that it's a good bill. Anything you see that is controversial?
Thank you very much, Sheung. It's good to be here. Today is a landmark day for Nigeria. I want to say straight ahead that this reform is one of the best reform that has been undertaken by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And by the way, for the purpose of disclosure, I'm a northerner, I'm a Muslim, I'm from Kano State. I want to commend the Presidential Committee, represented here by the Chairman, Mr. Oyedele, for doing an excellent job. And I'll tell you why, my fellow Northern Nigerians. I would like to refer us, because I got a bit worried, Sheung, when I saw the reactions of political leaders and other interested parties from Northern Nigeria. And it triggered me to have to speak to our people on my podcast, Reflections with Baba Yusuf, on a topic called, Dear Northern Nigeria, what have we done to ourselves? This is not the first time, but it's becoming a cyclical reaction that I think will not take us anywhere as a people. This reform, I dare say, as a Nigerian, as a patriot, and for those that know me, know that when I speak, I shoot straight. The Northern Nigeria will be one of the best beneficiaries of this reform. This reform is a reform of balance. It's a reform that speaks to equity. It's a reform that speaks to data and has provided a platform for improvement going forward. And I'll speak to 4 critical points out of this bill, ladies and gentlemen. Number 1, I will take it off from what my co-panelists mentioned about the multidimensionally poor Nigerians, over 133 according to NBS last year, over 133 million, out of which over 70% are from Core North, right? And we have also heard from Chairman of the Presidential Committee highlighting those that are exempted from tax. And to that extent, I agree with my panelists that about 90% of the vulnerables will be exempted from this tax. So as a northerner, where about 70% of the multidimensionally poor are resident and surviving and struggling under the vagaries of socio-economic headwinds, it should be pleasing to our leaders that where we have failed at subnationals, there is federal intervention to provide that which have not been provided by state governors. Secondly, I also noted in the bill the contentious issues of VAT. And mine is very simple. I am a strong proponent, surprisingly to a lot of Northerners, of allocation by derivation or allocation by consumption. Why? Because this rent-seeking transactional commission collection style of leadership will continue making people lazy and will make us complacent and forget the principles of leadership. The three cardinals of principles of leadership, fellow Nigerians, are value creation, value innovation, and value protection. And to my mind, these kind of reforms are the kind of reforms that will ease out politicians that go into power for the purpose of rent-seeking and commission collection. And if the argument is, without conceding, that this tax reform will reduce the inflow of the monthly allocation, whereby governors go cap in hand monthly to collect this as the only means of survival to the extent will not pay salary, I worry then to ask myself, why do people aspire to become leaders if they cannot create value? It cannot innovate. Indeed, some of the states in Nigeria are even bigger than some countries around the world who are thriving. Why? Because they create the value, they innovate, and they protect the value. So, if you look at the VAT, what has been done with this VAT is that the derivation, allocation by derivation or consumption, however we want to presupposes that for the site in Sokoto where BUA is extracting Sokoto and doing Sokoto cement, for example, whereby the current policy says the headquarters of BUA is in Lagos and almost the entire VAT goes to the headquarters. Now it's telling us that a chunk of that is going back to Sokoto, not all of it going to Lagos. Is that a value addition? In my own just simple arithmetic, the people of Sokoto should be clapping and singing to the high heavens that now they have an opportunity for them to add value. The same thing with my state, Kano. If you look at the subscription, MBS listed subscription of like the MTN subscribers for last year. Lagos, 26 million subscribers as of Q1 last year. Ogun State was next with 13 million, over 13 million. Kano, listen to this, over 12 million. Of course, Bayelsa 1.6 and Ebonyi 1.6. What this new reform is telling us, my dear brothers and sisters in the North, is MTN will now not pay VAT only to Lagos. It means these 12 million subscribers will be accounted for and prorated and be sent back to Kano, for example. Whereas, as it is today, almost all the states lose to Lagos, just as an instance. And you can go on and on with these instances. Right. I think one of the problems is, I will land with this, we should read these bills because we don't read them. Unless we read them, we will not understand the value. And citizens should read the systems and not the bill and not wait for political leaders to advise them.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Baba Yusuf. Well, we're just getting started. I'm seeing loads and loads of social media comments and question, and we have as much here also. And I'm understanding that we have the very first set of questions standing by. Before we do that, I have 5 minutes with Mr. Oyedele, and this 5 minutes is going to be confrontational. The questions on the controversies I'm going to ask you pointedly. Are you planning to use a consultant like Alpha Beta in Lagos to collect the revenues?
The answer is no. In fact, we had a very interesting debate at the committee level. I wanted to put a language in the law that says no government should use a consultant to collect tax. We think that that's one of the biggest problems in our economy today. So I can confirm to you 100% there is no plan whatsoever in using consultant to do any of this. The FRS has a tax promax that they had implemented. All that we need to do once we pass these bills, go to that system and amend the language, the algorithm, so that next time MTN is filing VAT returns, there's a request that says, tell me the state where they have emanated from. Should they give wrong information, there's a provision there for them to be penalized. Dangote will do the same thing. Banks will do the same thing. So we have the capacity already. We do not need consultants.
Okay. The second question I'd like to ask you, why do you want to scrap Naseni and TET Fund?
We are not scrapping Naseni and TET Fund. There's no such proposal in the bills we submitted. We agree that Nigerian businesses have to bear too many taxes, over 60 of them. It's stopping them from growing. So one of the fundamental objectives and deliverables of this reform is to harmonize that to a single-digit few number of taxes. And therefore, we identify TET Fund, Naseni, and a few others, and consolidate into one. Between 2025, if the bills are passed, and 2030, some of those key agencies will share out of the development levy of 4% that will reduce over time. By 2030, they will no longer share a special tax. Why? Because we think that government cannot collect corporate income tax, VAT, collect stamp duties, import duties, and then introduce new taxes for areas that they want to develop. All over the world, government collect taxes and they determine their priorities per time. Let those agencies be funded through budgetary allocations, not introducing new taxes. So the clear answer to your question is, we have not recommended, we have no such powers, it was not within our mandate, the scrapping of any agency.
Another question, on which these are picked out of, I've read a lot, is that why do you want to make one single agency headed by a man from the South so powerful that will be collecting more money than the CBN?
Yeah, so that's quite interesting because I didn't even see that coming before people started raising the questions. So this is never about an individual, it's about the institution. And if you look around the world, start from Africa, Ghana Revenue Authority, Kenya Revenue Service, South African Revenue Service, go outside Nigeria, HMRC. In fact, in many countries, those revenue agencies collect social security. If you go to Rwanda and you want to do your driver license, it's the revenue authority that collects it. Why? Because they have been set up to collect revenue. So they have the system, they have the structure, they have the training, they have the experience, they have the capacity. What we are doing in Nigeria is at the federal government level, we have over 60 agencies of government with revenue targets. First, they're distracted from their primary mandate. Many of them forget why they were set up, and they are chasing revenue to the detriment of the economy. What we are saying is, let us harmonize how we collect taxes, integrate using intelligence, and let everybody else focus on their primary mandate, and the country will win.
The question is that some of them are complaining that they don't even have the capacity to collect all the revenues under their remit. Does the agency that you are trying to recreate have the capacity to be able to collect? Is that not a recipe for disaster?
No, you can only get better from where we are today. So first, we are not merging any agencies. It's not in our recommendation in the proposals, but we use technology to integrate. If I import these phones today, I want that declare because I don't want to pay import duties. When I go to FRS, I over declare because I want to get tax deduction so I don't pay CIT. People are doing that and getting away with it. First, these bills are saying, let's integrate the system. Whether you go to the US, Brazil, or Canada, where they do the same thing. You integrate. So you can have information that you can exchange to stop people taking advantage of the loophole in the information asymmetry. So, yes, FRS has the capacity. In fact, the entire revenue we are collecting in Nigeria today is less than 20% of what South African Revenue Service is collecting. We do not lack capacity in Nigeria. Human capacity, resources, technology, we have them in abundance.
Why the rush? You did not consult the governors, and they say that you are trying to hoodwink and go behind and rush up these bills. Why the rush?
This is not rushing at all. By the way, we consulted. We had one session with the governors forum. We had two.
So you consulted the governors?
We consulted the governors.
But they say you didn't consult them.
No, they won't say we didn't consult them. They're saying we need to consult more, which we agree with. Because consultation will never end. Even after passing the bills, we must continue to consult. We had two sessions with the National Economic Council. We had almost a whole day with the finance commissioners from all over Nigeria. We've had at least 4 sessions with the head of the Internal Revenue Service from all the 36 states plus the FCT. We've written to 6 geopolitical zones. We identify 1 governor per zone and wrote to them to go and meet them where they are with their cabinet and discuss. We did some of that. Some of them did not have time for us. For those who had, we appreciate the governor of Lagos. He said, you know what, let's even set up a committee between my cabinet and your team to walk through the details. We work for more than 6 months. We always welcome opportunities to engage, but it is not correct to say that we did not consult.
All right. This, the final one.
And we are not in a hurry, sorry. Because when you find yourself in a situation where we are now, where people are struggling, there's poverty in the land, some people can't make ends meet, the time to cut their taxes, the time to provide relief, the time to create opportunity for them, the time to make our businesses thrive is now, not tomorrow. In fact, we should have done it yesterday, but now is the next best time.
Okay. The last question, which is one of the major issues, is that you are going to cost Bola Tinubu a possibility of a second term. You have upset some political heavyweight in this country. Do you realize that?
I feel really very sorry for Mr. President, even though he says nobody should feel sorry for him. That despite, and I have to be honest with you, in this role, Mr. President has never for once asked my committee to make sure that we do something when we are done. He has allowed us 100% freedom to do everything. And they're just Nigerians from all over Nigeria who came up with this analysis using data to make those recommendations. But they blame everything on him. But as a leader, he's taking all of it in good faith. I hope that the reason why, if anything happens in 2027, will not be because of this bill. Because that way, we'll be doing an injustice, not only to him, but to the whole of this country, Nigeria.
All right, we'll take a pause there, because as I have one more, which is the argument that some northern states are going to be getting less. So when I invited him and I told him about this idea, I said, give me a scenario of what this bill is proposing and what 5 states, for example, across the region will be collecting. I'll keep that. Stay with us right here on the town hall. I have 4 people who are standing by in the first set of questions that we'll be having. I have the Ambassador Mohammed Sahad Aboki, the National President, Arewa Youth Movement. Please, your question, sir.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. So, I have a lot of questions, but the explanation of the Chairman Presidential Committee and that of the Right Honorable, former Honorable Speaker of National Assembly, House of Reps, have already cleared the air on some of the questions I want to ask. But however, my concern here is, you see, the governors now, from their statements, are trying to now make this issue now to fall back to the low earners. If you look at so many of them, they are making statements like it will be difficult for them to pay minimum wage. Don't you think they will not fall back to that as a negotiating factor? And secondly, the 800,000 naira exemption that was captured, don't you think it's better we extend it a little more? Because you look at the currency is no longer, the naira is devaluing. And even POS business today, the minimum capital to start it, if you want it to stabilize, is supposed to be more than 1 million or plus. So don't you think that should be at least adjusted to like 3 million naira or 2.5, something like that, so that at least people within that range can be able to stabilize their business?
All right.
Looking at the value of the currency. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next person is the Executive Secretary, Nigeria Economic Zones Association, Toyin Elegbede.
Thank you very much, Sheung, for having us here, and I thank the panel. Mr. Oyedele, I thank you for the good job you have done via the bill. However, the free zone community has a concern about that bill. And many people have not addressed this. Even you have not addressed it while explaining the work of the committee to the National Assembly. I want to state that while the intention of government and your committee to modernize the tax framework in Nigeria is salutary, I want to say to you that some sections of that bill, that is the Nigerian Tax Bill 2024, some sections that are in that bill are inimical to the survival of the Nigerian Free Zone Scheme. This is particularly evident in sections 60, section 57, section 198, subsection 2, section 198, subsection 3, and the second schedule to the bill. And I'm sure if you go and look at those sections, you will see that they will kill the Nigerian Free Zone Scheme. So I have two questions. One is this. I listened to you when you made your presentation at the National Assembly, both at the House of Rep and the Senate, and you read out the names of the groups that you consulted before coming up with the draft. But you never consulted the Free Zone Scheme of the Free Zone community. You never consulted us. I'm wondering why you left out the Free Zone community. The second question is this. Why introduce those sections into the bill when you know, because I know you're an international man, when you know quite well that those sections that are introduced into the bill are the offers. In fact, they constitute the offer that was made to international investors for them to come into the Nigerian Free Zone. Why introduce it to drive them away? Why introduce those sections to push our investors to neighboring countries with friendlier investment policies?
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Legbede, I appreciate it. The third person is the deputy editor of the Sun newspaper, Mr. Ismail Omepidon.
Thank you very much. I listened carefully to the chairman of the Tax Reform Committee. I also listened to the governor of Borno yesterday. And from the explanation you gave, because if we all know the way budgetary allocations are made in Nigeria, from your explanation, for me, it appears when you say you are reducing what those agencies get, it appears it's a stylish way of killing those agencies, because that is, I want you to please provide more explanation with regards to that. Now, on derivation, I'm aware that long before now there has been this argument that those who don't consume beer should not enjoy what comes from the sale of beer. And for me, it appears that is the main issue concerning this issue of derivation. Can you please elucidate more on that? Finally, how do you think we can reduce this north-south dichotomy over these reform bills? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mikpidon. The fourth person in this segment of these questions is the former Deputy Governor of Kogi State, His Excellency Achuba Simon.
Thank you very much, the panelists. The North is worried. There is no doubt about that. And you can feel it in the air if you are sensitive to the development in Nigeria. And they believe, and the information that is going around the North is that VAT now will be more for where the headquarters of the organization is located. And this information is making the Northerners to believe that Lagos has all the headquarters of these companies. If Maggi is produced in Lagos and is mostly taken in the North, then Lagos takes the VAT. Whereas VAT is supposed to be a consumption tax. This is the thrust of the matter. What do you think should be done on this? Secondly, like Shehu asked, he said, why do you think that one organization should today take up the collection of revenues in Nigeria? How built and how trained is the Federal Inland Revenue Service? Take, for instance, the collection of import and export duties at the borders, at our airport, at our seaport, that is currently managed by the customs. The customs will never leave the border. They will still be there. And then the FRIS will now come in. There will be a bit of conflict. And it is going to be an issue. I fear that if it is not properly managed, revenue will nosedive. Maybe for about 6 months to 1 year, there will be crisis. Because the nitty-gritty of how this revenue for import and export is collected, the Internal Revenue Service may not have that expertise as the customs who have managed it over the years.
All right.
Now, the third question is this.
Oh, yeah. Your Excellency, you came with a 3-barrel.
One of the quality of a law is acceptability. When a law's acceptability is in question, the performance of that law will be in doubt. What do you have to say on that?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. By popular demand, there are a lot of people that are asking questions and how long this is going to take. Channels Television has taken it upon itself to add 1 hour to this conversation so that we'll have it more robust. I think someone will clap for Channels Television. So I will allow members of the panel to chip in a few things, right? But allow Mr. Oyedele, because you have the burden to be able to explain. But you have some 4 minutes to tackle those 4 questions.
All right. So the first one is the comment by the governor of Borno State about them not being able to pay salaries if this is implemented. So that's not supported by the proposals or the data that we have. So currently, companies pay their VAT based on their head office, mostly Lagos. I'll tell you that for 2023, 80.26% of VAT was attributed to Lagos. By the time we use the consumption data from MBS, Lagos State came down from 80.26 to 15.28%. The top 5 states were Lagos, Rivers, Oyo, Delta, and Kano. The bottom 5 states, Sokoto, Cross River, Zamfara, Imo, and Abia, when we use the consumption data from MBS, Lagos State's attribution reduced by 81%, but I'll leave that. For the bottom 5, Sokoto's data increased by 486%, almost 5 times. Cross River increased by 2,230%. In fact, Imo increased by 5,840%, 58 times. So what we are saying is attribute it correctly. By the way, the things that companies pay VAT on, the top 10, telecommunication, cement, beverages, fast-moving consumer products, sugar, professional services, entertainment, petrochemical, including lubricants and plastic, electronics, including mobile phone and appliances, and utility, are consumed in all the states in Nigeria. So I do not see where the fear is coming from and there's an extra 5% from the federal government to provide a buffer. So I would say that that fear is not supported by the analysis we have and the available data.
The fear that they will not be able to pay salaries.
Yes. We have to also remind ourselves, these same Nigerians and the ones who are paying commercial price now for fuel products. You know, the fuel products we pay commercial price for today is going to save the government about 10 trillion naira next year. This 10 trillion naira will be shared to states. They will share more than 60%. By the way, you know the sharing formula, if you do the effective, federal government gets less than 40%. So it's going to go to the state. How can they pay salaries with that? The same Nigerians are bearing the burden of having to pay fuel at commercial price, exchange rate flotation. You also want them to pay all manner of taxes. I don't think that's fair enough. We will have more than enough to pay salaries. Then there's a question about the 800,000 naira that we're exempting from tax. Can't we increase it a little bit and all of that? So first, there's the 800,000 naira on which you don't pay tax per annum. There's also another 200,000, like a rent relief. So altogether is 1 million. Now that 1 million is the income level of about 33% of Nigerian workers across private and public sector. That's huge. If you go above that, we move to 1.7 million naira per month and below, and we are reducing it. We can't exempt them. If you exempt them, more than 90% of states will have no IGR from personal income tax anymore, which is their major source of IGR. We still need to run government. So we had used data in our analysis, and that's how we arrive at those thresholds. In the course of time, as the economy improves, there might be a need to increase that amount, and that can easily be done by an amendment to the law when it becomes necessary. Free zone. You are right, sir. You know, free zone is an interesting conversation. Free zone all over the world is a concept where you say that a particular location will pretend that it's not in our country. Do everything you can, don't pay taxes, no duties, so that you can export. So when we started, we said they could export up to 75%, and they can sell 25% within the custom territory. Later on, that was increased to 100%. So we are saying that it's okay for you to be physically in Nigeria. We'll say you are in the free zone, you do your business, you can sell it to Nigeria, but you don't pay tax. How does that work? What will happen, sir, if you and I are in the same business and you are in the free zone and I'm not in the free zone? I cannot survive. You can even underprice me out of that market. I will use the last effort, resources, and the blood that I have to get into the free zone. Before you know it, sir, all the companies in Nigeria will be in the free zone, where we can no longer raise money to fund the budget. We will print. When we print money endlessly, it will be Zimbabwe, when 100 trillion Zimbabwe dollar was barely enough to buy a loaf of bread. This is something we have to correct. We are not aware of any other country in the world where you set up a free zone and you can sell 100% to the custom territory. We are waiting for that data. You spoke about consultation. Consultation is a very interesting thing I'm finding out from this job. We had a meeting with the Minister for Trade, Industry and Investments. And the agency under that ministry, over 22 of them, we set up a group. We had meetings. We had a whole day meeting in Abuja here. And the Free Zone Authority was represented. They were by 2 or 3 people. My brother was there. So if they decide on who to send, the CEOs don't want to attend meetings, we can't handle that. We have to move on. We are willing to further engage, but provide data to us, and we're more than happy to relook at our recommendations. So there is another point around the agencies. We said that these agencies will not be collecting taxes to run their agencies again. Would that not mean that they will go into extinction? But do you know how many agencies government have? Over 1,000. So why is it that we have a few of them that have special taxes? Government all over the world will do a budget and fund their agencies. That's why people pay companies income tax. They pay value-added tax. They pay personal income tax, stamp duties, import duties. Government should take its revenue when it has been collected and decide what they want to use it to fund. Do not set up a new tax every time. for a new agency. At the end of the 9th National Assembly, we went through over 250 bills that were not passed. We saw 40 of them had taxes inside of them. 0.something% here, levy of 1.something here. If we finish with that, it will no longer make economic sense for anyone to do business in Nigeria unless they're a criminal who will not pay any taxes. So that's the problem we are trying to solve. We have not recommended that any agency should be scrapped. We are saying they should be funded. By the way, the best universities in the world, the countries that warehouse them, don't have taxes for education, right? And many of them make more money from endowment alone than the entire money we've made from education tax since inception in 1993 to date. Then the other question here is beer consumption. Again, data. They say, they don't take beer in the north. They don't allow beer to come, and they're sharing VAT. Guess what? The VAT from beer and tobacco is around just 2%. But if you go beyond that, the input that goes into manufacturing those beverages, most of them come from the north. Sorghum. We shouldn't be dividing ourselves. Those narratives are not helpful. If you go to a consumption base, if you consume sorghum, you do the VAT. You consume beer, you don't like beer, you take. By the way, the data shows that in the north, they take sugar sweetened beverages than in the south. It carries VAT as well. So we don't think that is a conversation that is supported by data, and therefore it's not really relevant to our reforms. Then there's one about I think this is on import duty. I don't know whether I got it wrong. Yes, import duty. So today, we're not proposing that the FRS will become they will go to the border and be collecting import duties. No, in fact, you will not see them physically in any of those agencies. This is going to be a technology integration. Physically, you still find custom at the border. They will do the assessment, but the payment will not go through them. So that everything can be harmonized in one place. We can have transparency. By the way, many of these agencies like to collect revenue, not because they know how to collect it, but because of cost of collection. There was a state where the finance commissioner told me that there's an agency, they keep 35% cost of collection. I've never heard anything like that in the world. This is just stealing money from the public. When we become efficient internationally, the cost of collecting revenue is 1%. So you can keep the rest of the money to take care of the people, not waste it. So this is what we're also trying to do. The other one is that we have these VAT and headquarters effects. And I think I've explained it, right? But my brother Paul made a very important point around VAT and the rate that is going up. I spent, without claiming any, with all sense of humility, I spent over a decade leading tax practice in Africa for PwC. And as part of the global team, I looked at the tax system in more than 180 countries for more than 10 years. So when I say these things, I say from the angle of knowledge and experience. The VAT we have in Nigeria today shows 7.5%, but it feels like 12 to 15%. You know why? We do not allow businesses to get input credit for assets. You build a factory in Nigeria, you pay VAT, we say good luck with your business. You build that same factory in Ghana, where VAT rate is 17.5%. Ghana gives you the money back. In these our bills, we are giving the money back to the businesses. Whether they build factories, whether it's assets, whether it's services, they will get the credit back 100%. What that means is their cost of business goes down. That's why we spend time with CFOs, because they are the number guys. And we're showing them the numbers. We've taken 82% of consumption and removed the VAT on it. When we modeled it, the VAT revenue reduced by 60%. We know we have a budget deficit problem. So I don't see anything wrong in us now saying, if you buy wines, you buy a mobile phone, you buy brand new cars, just give us a little bit more so that we can close part of this gap we've created, taking care of our vulnerable people. I can tell you 100%. Those VAT rate adjustments will not create inflation. In fact, if the companies are not greedy and they pass the benefits to the customers, The VAT rate will go up, but the price of the goods and services will come down. That's the maths.
Right.
And we challenge anybody to take us up on that. I think there's just one last one. The other one is about the acceptability, that if it's not acceptable, how do we implement? We do agree that people need to accept, and that's why we gave the data. We respect our leaders, our governors, our lawmakers, our ministers, Mr. President. They're very important. But guess who is more important? Is the Nigerian people, which is why we're having this session today. And the engagement we've had with the Nigerian people, that's the data I gave you. They are fully supportive. We finish sessions with, have you imagined that manufacturers are not complaining? Chambers of commerce are not complaining. NECA is, because we spend time with them, they are praying for us. They're saying, when can these things be implemented? We believe that at the end of the day, even people who disagree will see the reason to come on board when it comes to implementation and be able to implement fully.
There are those who are saying that you are talking about the governors, but they are not the owners of the state. The local governments are. That did you actually consult with the local governments?
We did. We consulted with in fact, we had a whole session. We started with the FCT here, and it was in the press. We've not consulted with all of them. There's so many, right? But we consulted with some of them, and we plan to continue with those consultations.
All right.
Even Nigerians in the diaspora, people with disability, we had more than 40 sectors. Radio, TV, newspaper. We have a dedicated website, social media accounts. We have engaged, we've consulted, and we'll continue to engage.
We're due for a break, and I'll allow about a minute each for the panelists to respond to some of these issues. And I have yet another set of questions in the room. But there are people who are not here. Some of the questions have been answered. Their interests are also covered, and those who are on social media and they're throwing in their questions. I'll take a few of them. This is Mustafa Yamai from Facebook. He says, what is the benefit for Nigerians? And we want him to highlight more on the bill. Nigerians are saying the bill will not benefit Lagos. What will he say to that? That on one hand, that's from Mustafa Yamai from Facebook. And on Facebook also is Namadu Nora, who says, if actually the tax reform bill is for the good of the ordinary Nigerians and majority of them have rejected it, why is the government lobbying and insisting that it must go ahead with it against all odds? Also, I have yet another one from, this time around is from Twitter, X. It says, and Abib Bulai at IBN_Kareem, he says, my question is to Right Honorable Yakubu Dogara, is why are the northern people angry about the quick passage of the bill? Another question from Musa Abdurrahman from Facebook. He said, what are the reasons behind the progressive increase in value-added tax, and how will this impact businesses and individuals? What is the proposed VAT sharing formula among the federal, state, and local government? But we'll take a pause, everyone. We'll go on a break, and when we come back, I'll allow the panelists 1 minute each to respond to some of these issues. Then we have another batch of questions. Don't forget, we are running till about 10 p.m. Courtesy Channels Television. It's for the interest of the Nigerian people, and that's what we stand for on that television station. We'll be right back, everyone, after this break. Thanks so much, everyone, for staying with us on this special event put together by Channels Television. Special focus on the very controversial tax reform bills proposed by the executive to the National Assembly. And let's get back to the conversation, everyone. I said earlier before we went on that break, we have yet another batch of people in the town hall who are going to be asking questions. But before we get into that, we saw some questions on social media. And of course, it will allow the panelists also to weigh in about 60 seconds each. Let me begin with the former Speaker of the House of Reps, Yakubu Dogara.
Okay, thank you, Sean. I think the question that was asked of me is why are Northerners angry? I thought anger is a very harsh word. But to answer the question, you see, all of us operate within the available light that we have. For instance, when I first had discussion about these tax reforms, I was merely listening to people interpret what these proposals were. As a matter of fact, I had not even read them myself. So in most cases, people react to information without bothering to check if those information they have had are actually true. So you cannot blame a lot of people when they react this way because they are listening to their leaders who are misinforming them, so to say. But the reason why these forums are held is not for the government to lobby people, but it's for the information, the correct information to be passed to people so that people can really process them and then by it, be able to guide whatever their responses would be to initiatives like this. So I think the reaction from the North is based on the available light, but we're telling them that they are being misinformed. In a forum like this, you have heard from the experts, they have spoken to this, and I believe that efforts like this will get people truly informed to be able to take informed decisions concerning these reforms. Two things. Maybe I may not have opportunity to say anything again. I didn't wrap up because you were hurrying me up. One thing that was raised here that is important is the issue of trust. And I'm happy that you brought up this issue of alpha beta, that we're trying to do alpha beta in Nigeria as against just Lagos. So when you hear a lot of people saying that why the hurry, they know that there's no hurry in anything. I was in that parliament, there were so many legislations that were ramped up within weeks. Nobody was talking about hurry then. And they will even tell you, why was PIB not hurriedly done like this? But have they actually sat to count the cost of taking years to work on a simple bill like the PIB? Have they actually taken time to count the cost? So, as far as I'm concerned, to escalate this trust, I love what the chairman said. That for those who fear that the president has an agenda to impose alpha beta on revenue collection in Nigeria, it is important for us to dispel that by the instrument of the amendment he was just talking about. For instance, there's nothing stopping us at the level of National Assembly to say, look, we will introduce a proviso in this law that says that in executing this law, the National Nigerian Revenue Service shall not have recourse to consultants. That solves the problem. And if the president were to say, no, I'm not going to sign it for that clause, then everybody will now know, oh, yes, he really wanted to introduce alpha beta. But I told someone, I said, well, if you really believe that that is the problem, why they are in a hurry? Do you think there's anything stopping the president, for instance, from introducing alpha beta right now? He said no. So this argument begs the question. Then lastly, I want to talk
before you move
about
to the last
issue.
one,
Yes.
just hold on.
Yes.
In terms of parliamentary procedure,
Yes.
is this the fastest that we have seen? In terms of explaining the hoariness that is being put into this, in terms of parliamentary procedure, is this moving so fast or slow?
I think, Seun, I had answered that question when I said that there are so many legislation in the course of my stay in the National Assembly that we just ramped them up. Within weeks, we were done with it. For instance, the Northeast Development Commission, that I happened to be the sponsor. I knew how hurriedly we put that law together. And then because of the level of devastation then in the Northeast, and then the parlous nature of the livelihood of the people there, everybody understood with us. And I believe that these reforms too are as important as the measures that led us to do that in the National Assembly. And then I will speak lastly to the issue of the call on the president to withdraw these tax reforms from the National Assembly. I think I will say that if I were the one, I would simply say that the horses have bolted or that the train has left the station.
All right.
And you will not understand what I'm talking about, except you grew up on a railway corridor. When they tell you that the train has left, you understand. So let me close with this. You see, the president is right. He has demonstrated leadership. And once you are able to determine what is right, you have the power and you have the opportunity to do it. If you don't do it, there is a bad name for it. And if you want me to say it, it is called cowardice. And the president has demonstrated oftentimes that he is not a coward. So the question of withdrawing these bills are not there. The National Assembly is the proper forum for debate, for contestation, for disagreement. Nothing stopped the National Assembly from holding, even if it is a joint public hearing on the bill between the Senate and the House of Representatives. If the northern governors have issues, let them articulate their issues. Proffer solution. The president has said this is the best way I intend to achieve this. We are free, it's a democracy, for crying out loud, to disagree with the president and say, look, we disagree, we agree with the general principles, but instead of what the president has proposed, this is our own proposal. Traditional rulers too should come there. People like us, all of us, if we're invited, we should be able to avail ourselves as part of our civic duty to be at the National Assembly in order to look at all the issues that have been raised and to proffer solution. But lastly, let me say this. We must concede to people who feel compelled sometimes to go even on national television to tell us how intelligent they are, the kind of schools they went to. But intelligence is applying to yourself to think about solutions and talk about solutions. Not to say that issues cannot be resolved because we disagree with them. That is not the brand of politics we should be promoting. That is good for content creators. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Baba Yusuf, your 60 seconds starts counting now.
Thank you very much. Real quick, the issue of salary, I think I spoke about it in my opening remarks, but just to reiterate, as mentioned by the chairman, Presidential Committee, it's obvious that money is not going to reduce. But what I'm saying is, let us remember, in over 1 year, governors have gotten double what they were getting. What happened to that part of the double? How were they able to hedge against potentialities? How are they able to use that to create value, not just for tax reform, for whatever will come to protect? That is the value protection aspect of it. I don't want to believe that. I think this is a political talk to be able to leverage negotiation, which is okay. But when we get to that bridge, we'll cross it. There was a concern by the representative of the free trade zone. I am a special economic zones expert. I was the first substantive MD CEO of the first airport free trade zone in Nigeria. And I'm a member of the World Free Zone Organization. Sir, the principle behind free zone is that the free zone should catalyze economic, activities and growth. It is front-facing on the export side with a proviso from time immemorial that there's what you call the second layer plowback to the local market. And before this provision was brought in the reform, I know as an operative in that space that you have to do what is even called value addition before you send it to the custom territory, which is like within the country. So for us to say that free zones should do a cap of 25% back as a second layer plowback into the economy is, to say the least, being lenient on the free zone as a member of that constituency. If we say a free zone has to pay back, has to do 100% without paying any tax, then we can as well say we are living in a free nation and everybody shouldn't pay tax anyway. Moving on to the issue of trust, I have 4 words for us, and I will add it to the comments made by Right Honorable Dogara. We have a parliament that is supposed to be a representation of all of us. I cringe in my seat when members of parliament who have collected big bonus and big vehicles are not ready to go through a legislation process and are saying throw away the bill, and are saying don't listen to Mr. Oyewole and his team to even explain what this is all about. And to me, it reeks of, some kind of things that we don't want to say here. So what I'm saying is, I expect governors with profound respect to governors and legislators to look at this bill in the interest of our people, read the bills, get people to add value to it, engage, consult, debate, and negotiate where necessary. I will close with this. Okay. The issue of revenue collection. I'm sorry, I'll close quickly. It's very important. I will use the airport, for example. Everybody knows if you travel around Nigerian airports, especially let's use Lagos, is the most cluttered in terms of agencies, what you call the pain points, from beginning to the end or coming back. Now, what this is supposed to do is to streamline collection, block loopholes and make it more efficient if we look at the single window, concept for the airports. And that is supposed to also address the issues at the other ports, whether it is land or sea. So it is not taking the functions of organizations, but streamlining and blocking leakages and establishing a governance framework where a regulator or an enforcer will not be chasing commission, thereby not doing their real job. And that is why we have leakages in the borders, for example. So I think we should debate, negotiate, engage, and consult.
Thank you so much. Mr. Michael Chibuzo, your 60 seconds starts now.
Okay, I think I will start with the question that borders on Lagos. Somebody asked something about Lagos. And from this whole conversation, I think Lagos should be the angriest, if I should put it that way, if we are to be very honest with ourselves. Because they Rivers went to court, talking about the VAT issue, by the way, went to court because they saw a loophole in our constitution and exploited it, and they won at the first instance, including Lagos joined. And I want to put it to you, if they go to the Supreme Court, they win. And that will throw up so many things, because we are looking at a situation whereby we need to balance out, we need to do certain kind of trade-offs. And it is to the credit of Lagos that all this while they've been very, very helpful, very cooperative. I want to tell you something about what it means for Lagos. People feel that, yes, Lagos collects the highest amount of VAT. Yes. But in terms of the percentage of VAT to their revenue, it is not that much. Let's look at the data for 2023 in terms of the IGR collection. You see that Lagos clocked close to 815 billion naira, if I'm not mistaken. Out of that 815 billion naira, the pay as you earn, that is payee component in law, was almost more than 400 billion. If you put the VAT Lagos got last year side by side with the direct access, the payee Lagos generated, you see that it is ×3 of the VAT they got. In fact, the entire federal allocation, both VAT and other components, is not even up to the payee component Lagos generated. So it's not as if Lagos is dependent on the VAT aspect to fund their processes, but that is by the way. And if you look at the other states, one of the reasons why some of the less endowed states, if I should put it that way, tend to be up in arms with this is because the VAT is always the biggest component of their. In my state, Anambra State, our IGR was around 33 billion last year. VAT was close to 39 billion. So naturally, you expect some of these governors to be looking at the immediate picture, not even, sometimes they are not even looking at any picture. So I think they need to start putting on their thinking cap, like the chairman said, look at the data. They should not be apprehensive. Because these bills open a lot of opportunity for them to maximize. Now, we're talking about avoiding tax evasion. There are provisions in that bill that will make sure that every taxable individual that is not exempted is made to pay, especially the rich. And I want to point out that it seems that the elites are actually trying to mobilize the masses to fight for them. Because if you look at certain provision in that Nigerian Tax Administration Bill, the NTAB, it makes a provision for financial institutions to give monthly reports to the tax authority in terms of personal income tax now for all the customers, individual customers that make transactions that gross over 25 million naira in a month. The addresses and everything. These are for purposes of trying to make sure nobody evades tax. Somebody that has an individual that makes 25 million naira in a transaction is not a poor person. You can count a handful of people that can do that in Nigeria. So if the bills are meant to go after some of these rich people or people that are high net worth individuals, it is for the benefit of our country, because in a country where you need to talk about justice and fairness, the rich need to pay a fair share of their taxes. So that is the point. Then secondly, lastly, I want to talk about the issue of hurrying. The National Assembly is meant to make laws. They have different processes, starting from the moment an executive bill comes to the National Assembly. They do the first reading, and then they do the second reading, refer it to the committee stage. So whatever it is that you want to, if the consultation that happened before the bills or the recommendation of the tax reform committee got to the National Assembly is not enough for you as a governor, as a public or maybe a corporate organization or a group. You have the opportunity of the public hearing to make your presentation, bring memoranda and order, and then state clearly and in specific time, this is the section you want to be amended, or this is the area you are not comfortable with. Not going on national TV, making blanket statements against the whole to try out the bill with the water. And I want to also say something about one last thing about the comment made by a very respected politician in the North, Musa Kwankwaso, the senator. The things he said about the tax bill. Sometimes I went through his manifesto, and I saw that most of those things in our these 4 tax bills are part of the things he promised to do in his manifesto. He promised to raise VAT. He promised to reduce company income tax from 30% to around 25%. And that is part of the one of the recommendations in the Nigerian tax bill. So I think we need to allow this whole process to go on in a very coordinated manner that is dictated by data.
Dr. Alaji is almost taking all your time.
But it's good people let the public know what their views are. So for me, I would want to anchor on the following. 2025 budget is yet to be taken to the Assembly. Could it be one of the things we are considering to be sure that we can finance 47.98 budget, as it's been mentioned in the MTEB? If this be the case, can our legislature consider areas of concerns instead of us thinking we can throw it away? Why have I said this? 2025, it's a critical year for us. If we don't manage it well, we might for the first time have a slump in a pre-election year, which is 2026. And if you have a slump in 2026, a pre-election year, forget the next 4 years. Already we have had crisis in the last 3 to 4 years due to economic quagmire and policies. My point is this: the reservations I have about the bill, I've mentioned them. I don't think, Mr. Oyedele mentioned a very good point by saying it will now be applicable, that's input-output. But I'm saying, which system is going to run it? What penalty will be put in place when this is not done? Who will be there? What capacity do we have to ensure that? Because if you do input-output, then the new percentage will not be a problem. But for most of the time, when people consume and they want to claim, it becomes a challenge. FRS is doing a great job. The ones I've interacted with in Abuja, and perhaps the ones I've interacted with in Lagos. But what happened in other states? The reports and data we picked are not saying exactly the same thing. Maybe because we have the chairman here, who of course ensures that things are done correctly. That is why I am of the opinion that implementing this bill especially for 2025, I would want status quo to remain, which is 7.5. If we are able to implement input-output under 7.5, then 10% makes sense. Then 12.5% makes sense. Then 15% makes sense. So people see that they have gained from the benefit of technology and what has been implemented. My other point will be to our leaders. We are looking at a possible review in VAT. We are looking at a section of our people that will earn perhaps above, if you like, 100,000 or 150,000 a month. Because when we say 3 million, people don't know whether that 3 million is monthly or annual. So it's better we say it the way it is. If you earn about 150,000, 120,000, you may be paying part of the money, maybe 15%, or maybe 100,000, part of the money. Frivolous life. We have to slow down them. Because people will now part away more. And one good thing this bill has done, it has given breaks to people who are earning less. At least, to my mind, about 70,000 or 60-something thousand have received breaks. But how about those who are earning 100, 150? They might have to pay more. Now, the calculation before will be under the current regime. Minimum wage, if you earn above that, you may likely pay about 7%. But if you earn above that in this new regime, you'll be paying on the addition about 15%. I think we might need to review some of these rates so that we can balance it. I want to anchor on this. I try not to get into debate that wants to separate us, the North versus the South, the Christian versus Muslim, the learned versus unlearned. I don't want to get into those debates. And how do we finish it? I'm happy the chairman of the committee is a data person. Sir, I would want you to do something. Maybe not tonight. Take specimen of states. You have demonstrated part of it. But in actual number, this is the total VAT picked by Kano State this year. Under this new proposed regime, this is what it would have been in actual number. This is the VAT Oyo picked this year. Under this new arrangement, this is what it would have been, provided other things remain equal. Now, with this data, people can see for themselves that, practically speaking, so the fear that people have would have been danced, and the entire Nigeria will now know that, okay, maybe our leaders are misleading us. Because there is a certain increase in what is being heard. But perhaps when people don't see numbers, they assume that this is what they are saying. It becomes Dogo Turunchi. That's my submission. Thank you, and God bless Nigeria.
All right. We're getting somewhere. Can we stand by the slide from Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, especially requested that for the interest, because I wasn't convinced with the explanation from the committee about what will the state get. And I told him, give us a scenario. With the present proposition, 5 states, what are they getting now? And what would they be getting? Stand by that for me, because I'm going to come to it in a moment. But there is a very interesting question that someone was asking me. And before, please, let's stand by the questions from the hall. I'm coming to the people in the hall now. What informed the sharing formula?
That's a very good question. So I think people misplace the debate. They think the debate is between the 20% derivation now and the 60% that we have proposed. That's not the debate. The debate is between the 20% you have now on a lopsided basis and 100%. The 100% will happen if one state follows through to the Supreme Court. We will have no opportunity to negotiate. There will be zero opportunity to discuss. It will happen like magic, 24 hours. From the following day, nobody can collect that anymore. A state will enact their law and collect it. You will share nothing on population. You share nothing on equality. And there will be chaos for businesses because our system is not robust to deal with input-output between states. In fact, I'll tell you today, there are some states who collect consumption tax. The numbers are rounding errors. They're struggling to collect it. So this is what is driving it for us. We see danger ahead in terms of what can happen to VAT that is becoming our highest revenue yielding tax. That is going almost exclusively to the states. Because if you take out FCT contribution, everything is going back to the states. We want to protect the states in the most effective manner. So that's what is driving that recommendation.
So this is important for me, right? This simulation, I love it. So let's look at the highest versus least derivation states. This slide and the next one are important. So stay with me, my producers who are on those slides. I asked specifically, send Mr. Tawo to do this job. All right, explain to us what we're seeing on the screen right now, the highest versus least derivation states, the current versus proposed model using VAT consumption data by NBS. And Nigerians, let's know whether what they are proposing makes sense or not. Go ahead, Mr. Oyedele.
Yes, so thank you. I know my brother, Paul Alaje, raised that point. For us, we didn't think initially that this should be a conversation for the general public. Because to be honest, if I wear my cap as a Nigerian, I just want to pay my tax and they should use it for the people. I don't want to bother my head about how they share it. We thought it was a conversation just for our leaders who share the money. Now that we're where we are, if it becomes necessary, we can put it out there in the public. But here is the limitations we have. About 18, 20 years ago, when I was a middle-level associate, I used to do VAT for clients, for companies. I helped them file their VAT returns. It was done based on branch location. A bank can do more than 400 returns every single month. It was a nightmare for businesses. So we got to a point of central filing, and then they started filing at the head office. But we stopped collecting the data about where the activities happened. This is what we now want to correct. Still pay your VAT centrally because it's good for business. But give us data. Dangote will tell us, I've sold 10 million bags. Pay all the VAT in Lagos with a schedule that says, I sent 1.2 million bags to Edo State. Because they have distributors and they have addresses, right? All the top items giving us VAT, you have addresses for where they're being consumed. We don't need any special technology today. We can implement it from next month if we pass the law today. So that is the major issue that we must bear in mind. So this data that you have there is showing that, so which means the best way we can simulate it is to take VAT being shared currently on the lopsided derivation of 20%, equality 50%, and population 30%. We take that data today, and then we use the MBS, Bureau of Statistics. They have data about consumption in all the states. So that consumption data is what we use to estimate what the VAT would have been if we were to attribute to each state. And after doing that exercise, the result is very interesting and fascinating. There is no way you calculate derivation and attribution in Nigeria. Lagos will still be the highest. But guess what? Their highest of 80.26% reduces to 15.28%. Whereas, look at Kano State. Kano State, even though they are top 5 now, they are at 0.89% derivation. That's what they've contributed. That's what the data says. But when you correct the data, you see, Kano State is giving us 6.17%. What is attributed to Kano State goes up by 594%, almost 6 times. So the same thing continues for all the other states. So the only states you can see there from the data, only Lagos and Rivers State have lower amounts attributed to them as derivation because they're the ones who are benefiting today from the lopsided attribution of derivation. So that's what the data shows, and we challenge anyone. The data people are throwing around, they take the current lopsided derivation and they're sharing it by 60%. That's not what we propose. That's not in the bill. So people have to read the bill carefully and take all the amendments together.
There is another simulation, and they used MTN
yes,
as a simulation.
Yes.
Just in 60 seconds, can you explain what the simulation is telling us?
Yes, so MTN is the largest contributor to VAT in Nigeria. So in fact, they pay VAT of over 200 billion every month. The gap between them and number two is daylight and darkness apart. So if you use MTN, it gives an idea. Today, all the VAT paid by MTN is credited and attributed to Lagos State. As you are making calls in Kano, in FCT, in Ekiti, in Edo, in Kebbi, everything is credited to Lagos State. So I took 120 billion just to simulate it. Take 120 billion remitted by MTN. Today is 100% to Lagos State. When you do the adjustment, we have to make some assumptions of what the data will come to. So let's say that comes back to around 20%, which is not different from, the one that we did, 80% became around 16. That's like 20%. If you use that 20%, you come to around 24. That's what they will now get. If you analyze it, look at the numbers. Look at the table up is what we do currently. Look at the table down. You see Lagos State is down. Everybody else is up. So this is, and somebody says, why is Lagos State agreeing with us? I said, to be honest, if you are doing the wrong thing, how can Lagos State disagree with you?
So it is an explanation of the distribution based on headquarters of some of these?
Yes, the table above is the headquarters effect.
It as presently is.
As it is currently.
Those places where they are headquartered.
That's correct.
In those states. But now, in the proposition,
yes,
it looks like
it looks differently.
All right.
It looks differently.
Take a pause, Minister.
Yes.
Get some water. And let's get another batch of
That's a good advice.
More questions are coming, both physically here and on social media. Yes, I have, first and foremost, Mr. Jakepele. I know an inclusive question is coming from there. If your bill is not inclusive, you are in trouble tonight. Mr. Jakepele, please go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I have always admired you, and I was pleased and humble that you came and sat with me, and you provided a simulation of ebony and ivory. You being the ebony, and I am the ivory. That said, Mr. Chairman, would you look Nigerians through the lens of the cameras of this television tonight and say to them that by tomorrow morning, which is International Disability Day, that you would have announced tonight that your committee will be inclusive of persons with disability. Would you do that for me, sir? I will wait for you to answer.
Right away. Yes. So just to put it in context, so we had a session dedicated to people with disability. For inclusion in the committee, we've completed the work, but more than happy, because we're still doing consultation and sometimes we have some small meetings, we're more than happy to involve people with disability.
To involve at least a person with disability?
Yes, I'm making that commitment.
And Chairman, it doesn't have to be me. It can be somebody else. But
absolutely.
Let it be
so that's a commitment.
Yes. Now, make that commitment.
That said, please don't clap because you're taking my time. That said, Chairman, let me give you a context of the question that I'm going to ask you. When you put out this bill, by the way, I'm a supporter of this bill. I think we need it because most of the funds that will come through tax will give us access to quality education, which is important for persons with disability. Now, that said, in context, Chairman, when you put out all the complex tax forms and even on your website, I guarantee you that it may not be disability friendly in terms of accessibility. That in mind, I'd like to ask you this question, and I took time to write it down. How will the government address the challenges faced by persons with disability in managing complex tax filings, especially those with limited literacy or cognitive ability? For instance, Chairman, I'm here. I'm not seeing your face, even with my glasses. I was surprised when the former speaker walked in. Very good friend. I couldn't recognize him. How will you address that? And real quick, as a follow-up to that, I wanted to ask you how you will ensure that tax reforms do not inadvertently create barriers for persons with disability in accessing essential goods and services. I will rest here. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Let's listen to Mr. Uroigbo, who is Dixon Uroigbo is a media executive. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I want to call your attention to the fact that economics and politics are in same bed, actually, and it will be very difficult for us to discuss economics here as affects tax reforms without also linking it to politics. I want to ask you directly, because the reality we are faced with in Nigeria is what we should consider also. I would like you to narrow down the explanations you're giving this night to how this tax reform bill or bills will help end the acute hunger in Nigeria today. That's one. Two, referring to the removal of subsidy now, where states are now said to be receiving more allocations from the federal purse. Will this bill not further help impoverish the Nigerian people? Because if we say that the removal of subsidy has enabled government, federal government, to give more allocations to states, and we're not seeing anything. So that policy, has it affected the Nigerian people positively? Even though, yes, the state governors are receiving more allocations, but the Nigerian people are daily going through the realities, really. The hunger is real. And then I want to ask the Right Honorable former Speaker, Honorable Yakubu Dogara, in your view, as an experienced politician, and with the reactions from the northern leaders, do you think there are political missteps that the northerners have made that may be corrected in the future with these realities on ground now?
All right. Thank you so much, Dixon. I appreciate your time. Let's now listen to Abimiku Solomon of the National Youth Council of Nigeria.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Actually, I came here with a lot of burden in my heart, especially because of the information that I gather concerning these bills. But I must say that I'm relieved by the explanations given. My concern actually is about the third phone, which from the bill, it is clearly stated that by 2030, the third phone will not receive anything from the tax or the taxes that shall be collected. And the students' loan will receive 100% funding. Well, actually, from the beginning, I wanted asking question, but the chairman has already answered the question that I intended to ask. But I want to advise that considering the fact that our institution of higher learning is the reason why this nation is moving forward, and with the funding, teachers have been trained, infrastructural development in the institutions, and now if this funding is stopped, it will definitely affect the institutions. And in the other way around, the students will bear the consequence of the stoppage of the funding. And already I can see it here from your proposal that the students' loan is going to receive 100% funding, which is to say, definitely, if this funding of TED fund is stopped, the school fees will increase. So my own advice is that you should reconsider this. And if need be, instead of stopping the funding of TED fund, the TED fund funding should continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Solomon. Let's now allow Valentine Achum, who is a public policy specialist.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. This bill, when it eventually gets enacted, it will become what I'd like to call the mother of all tax reforms in Nigeria because of its nature. And by its nature, I think it is quadripartite. It is 4 in 1. You don't get to see those kinds of bills every day. But I don't have problem with the nature, the idea behind the bill. In fact, the problem I have is the aspect of its implementation. Of course, you agree with me that in Nigeria, most public policies at the point of implementation, many times just veer off the road. Yeah. So my question is, in the aspect of implementation, because they're quite, and I'll give you some practical examples. During a course I did just last week at the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies in Kuru, because we discussed this, and that was the first time I took a deep dive into this particular bill. Before then, I knew nothing about it. So it took a course I did just last week to make me appreciate the bill, and wonderful ideas, which I feel, if properly implemented, would change the face of the entire economy of Nigeria. But my problem is in its implementation. So in the aspect of, SMEs, I would like to know how, in terms of simplification of, compliance for SMEs, how well will the strategies, basically what I want to know is, what are the strategies for implementation in this bill to ensure that maybe like the SMEs, how do they ensure that they get compliance in maintaining, activities essentially? And secondly, in the aspect of strengthening dispute resolution, very important, because there's going to be a whole lot of economic activity, new economic activity which this bill is going to spring forth. And it, of course, is going to bring about legal issues, adjudication issues. So one of my recommendations is that the government should ensure that the Tax Appeal Tribunal and the Office of the Tax Ombudsman are well-resourced and independent to resolve disputes promptly. How do we guarantee that the Tax Ombudsman and the Appeal Tribunal will be truly independent to address issues of adjudication and resolution?
Thank you so much, Valentine. Over this bill, if there was a particular actual war, physical war, we will have needed Russia, America, England, France to come to the rescue of Nigeria because there is actual war on social media. And because of these bills, I will take personal attention to those who are asked there. Before I allow you to respond to some of these issues, let me quickly. There's someone who had warned me that I must take our question. And in fact, we've seen about 8 people ask questions physically in this room. No woman. She's Princess Abike at Abikemi on Twitter, on X. And she says, payment of tax is a civic responsibility, same as voting during elections. If this is the case, why exempt a significant number of Nigerians from paying tax, knowing well that these categories of people from the majority of voters, where is the fairness? There is another person whom I always run away from, at Kemi Patriot. He said, Bia, Channels TV, Shane Walking, I haven't heard a woman ask or speak. So let me allow you, Mr. Oyedele, to quickly tackle those questions. I have more on social media, which I'm going to take after now.
All right. Thank you very much. And thank you for those excellent questions. I think maybe just to make one clarification, even though I was saying the other time about NRS, Nigeria Revenue Service, which is currently FRS, and collecting customs. So in the bills we have before the National Assembly, there's no provision there that says FRS or NRS will collect customs. I mentioned over 60 federal government agencies collecting taxes. There's no provision in those bills that say they will stop those agencies. I think we just have 1 or 2 agencies where their taxes will now be collected by NRS. But that description I gave is the ultimate destination we should aspire to get to. Maybe we'll get there in 5 years, in 10 years, but we need to get that point as quickly as possible. So to the questions before me, the committee and inclusivity, my brother, 100%, we are on board with that. So we'll speak after this event. Documents that we produce and how you comply with taxes and filing returns, are they disability friendly? This was something we spent time on. And I wouldn't say that we have the answer perfectly. The only thing we came up with is, if you provide significant exemption, then that means the number of people that need to comply with filing are limited. And then we have significant amount of simplification in the process of filing returns, including, just tell me your income alone. Part of what we are developing, because this is mostly administrative, is can't you have an interaction where you can speak and the system files the returns for you? We also have a provision where the system will pre-fill your information for you because we can get data from third parties. We're also planning to use artificial intelligence. So we're talking to the big techs and they say those things are possible. We're planning to translate, once the laws are passed, into different languages, Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa, Pidgin, and then can do Braille as well, and audio interaction. So it's a journey. We think we'll get there now that we're very intentional about it. The other one is, would this not create some barriers for people with disability for accessing goods and services? The answer is no. We haven't added any burden to it. I would admit that the tax bills on themselves, in and by themselves, cannot solve all the problems that people with disability are having to contend with. But from as much as possible from the tax side, we want to be able to help. And that's why we'll do further engagement. How will the bills help us reduce acute hunger? We're not speaking for the politicians. What we have done is to identify that Nigerians, average household, spend over 50% of their income just trying to feed, just to eat. And we said, let's remove all the taxes from food. That one is in the bills already. And to that extent, I can say, yeah, this will help with reducing hunger. Another person says, government receives more allocation because we remove subsidy. Will these bills not further impoverish the Nigerian people? Now, this is what I just like you to point to one place in the bills. Because that's why I spent time, when I was given the opportunity to do my introductory remarks, reading out the benefits. So this is reducing the burden for the Nigerian people. It's not increasing it. If we refuse to pass these bills, we would have missed out on the opportunity to reduce the burden of the Nigerian people who need it so desperately and, of course, deserve it. The other one is TET fund. We said by 2030, they should not receive special levy anymore. It will go to student loan fund. And then what will happen? Would school fees not go up? I will tell you honestly, the entire tertiary education trust fund that we even collect is less than $1 billion. That amount is what one university needs in Nigeria. So first, that is not the solution to the funding of the education system. There was a survey that came out about last week or 2 weeks ago, and they did ranking of universities in Africa. There's no Nigeria in the top 10. It is clear that, I'm a lecturer myself. I lecture at a university as a professor. I don't rely on the money because God has helped me to be able to, get to the point where I am. But every time I realize that a professor is earning 400,000 naira per month, my heart bleeds. I've attended a course in the US before where the professor told me he was earning $800,000 per annum. The person that is earning 400K in Nigeria cannot be there soul, body, and mind because he cannot make ends meet. He can't give his best. What if you get to a point, which is the model that works in almost every country where education is developed? You cannot be charging 60,000 naira school fees and you want to pay lecturers more than 400k. You won't find the money. Many of the schools are closing down because they can't pay electricity bills. If we get to a point, and it has happened in Nigeria before, where the standard of education is at the level where it needs to be, you know what will start happening? Foreign students will come. They will charge them full, in fact, with premium. The children of the rich people will pay commercial amounts. The children of the poor people will get the loan. In fact, many of them will get scholarship, free education to go to university. That's the model we think will play out. But it's not for us to decide. We do know that TET fund can find other sources of fund other than a special tax on companies. So the time is enough between now and 2030 to endowment alone. If you do it well, can give you more than $1 billion a year in Nigeria. And that's just one source of revenue. So I'll move on to the other one that says, implementation of these bills. How do we ensure that things are simple, compliance by SMEs, strengthening dispute resolution, and so on and so forth? Yes. If you read the bills, you see there's a deliberate intention, right, to provide framework for implementation and safeguards. The ombudsman, from how the person is appointed, to how they are remunerated, to how they report. They'll be reporting to the Nigerian people every 3 months. They'll report to the National Assembly. So it's not left to us if we decide not to read their reports and hold them to account. But we believe that the structure we've created would allow for implementation that will be far more effective than what we have today in Nigeria. On dispute resolution, we've strengthened in the bills the tax appeal tribunal, including to cover disputes from the subnational. And we didn't have that before. It was under FRS Establishment Act. We've done that now. Qualification, how long you'll be there, controls, and all of that have been already catered for. So we are confident that implementation will be much better. By the way, the committee was set up differently. And I think this is a model that we should replicate more in Nigeria. Before, we set up committees, they write report, take photos, and then go home. And then about 4 years later, we say, that report that they brought before, set up another committee to review it. This time around, Mr. President said, don't give me report and come and take photos. As you think about the ideas, consult with the people and help me implement.
All right.
So I think I have like 2 more.
Okay, just to let you know that the governors were the first, especially the northern governors and the northern leaders were the first to raise an objection. And I will have one of the governors speak to us and ask direct questions tonight as we speak. I have the governor of Nasarawa on the telephone. He will speak with us and they will ask the direct question because the concern of the governors will be speaking above their heads, but we will let the Nigerian people to hear directly from them. Fantastic. So quickly wrap up so that we can speak to him.
Yes, I'll wrap up. So there's a question from the only sister who has a question online. Thank you for asking. And her point is, why do we exempt a large number of Nigerians, given that under the social contract, everybody needs to make their own contribution? Here's the point. When you exempt low-income earners from paying personal income tax, they will still pay other taxes. So when they buy airtime, they'll pay VAT on it. All over the world, you will not find a single country where the people that hold government to account are the lowest people in society. When those people want to hold government to account, they burn down everything they can find. Government is held to account by the middle class. The upper class is too close, they are in bed with government. So in South Africa, you are exempted from personal income tax if you earn about 660,000 naira per month. 90% of the personal income tax they collect, which is more than 30 times the one we collect, they got it from 5% of their population. That's how to hold government to account, not by taxing poor people across the whole country. So I think I'll stop there.
So let's quickly bring the governor of Nasarawa State, His Excellency Governor Abdullahi Sule, is on the telephone with us. We have just a few minutes to wrap up, but it's good for us to have a holistic conversation since the governors are very much stakeholders here. Governor Abdullahi Sule, thank you so much for coming on tonight on this town hall. Governor, as have some of your concern as governors and leaders in the North been answered tonight?
Well, thank you very much, Sheun. I've been listening actually to all the conversations. I happen to be here in Abuja. I wish really that I knew about this town hall meeting. I would have been the first to come and sit down there so I can listen to the wonderful conversations that are going on. I think one of the challenges is a total misunderstanding of the position of the governors. That is one. Secondly, because when the governors took a position and asked questions, a lot of people did not even understand what the governors asked. Then secondly, I see a lot of people mentioning so many things about the governors, and my good friend Tayo, he was in Nasarawa, last month. And I heard him mentioning that he was able to discuss with the governors, and he discussed some of these issues, and the governors knew and this. But let me tell you something, Sheun. First and foremost, these governors we are talking about are a set of governors who, a lot of them, or a lot of us, are actually CEOs of some of these companies. We were the ones paying VAT. We were the ones collecting VAT on behalf of the government and paying them. One of the biggest companies when it comes to VAT collection and paying to the government is sugar. I was the immediate group managing director of Dangote Sugar. One of the biggest companies when it comes to VAT in Nigeria is cement. Dangote Cement today has even become the biggest a company in the Nigerian Stock Exchange with capitalization of over 8.16 trillion naira. That is the company I just finished coming from. So I'm going to talk to you from experience of the person collecting VAT on behalf of the government and giving them back to FIRs. So I have the conversation and I had the arguments. Now, one of the arguments that the northern governors brought forward is the issue of this increasing the VAT from 20% to 60% at the point of generation. And I'm happy, Tayo mentioned that it has now changed. It is going to be not just at the point of generation, but also the point of consumption. And that's where he did the distribution of that to say that Lagos State now will change to roughly about 15%. I had the conversation. That is fine. Now, those were some of the issues mentioned by the governors. The governor said, you know what? Why don't you withdraw this bill? Let us discuss it. Let us understand it. With due respect to Tayo, when he was in Nasarawa, it was not a subject. He spoke at our event. But if he had told us then in Nasarawa that, by the way, as part of the sensitization, we have a tax reform bill, and the issues of the tax reform bill have been this and this and this, that will have been part of the sensitization. That will have been part of the awareness. And this town hall meeting you are having today, these are the kinds of things that should have happened before the bill was even sent. That's just the point the governors were mentioning. And there is no way the governors will be lying that Tayo had come and discussed with us, and all the 36 governors, some of us were CEOs of some of these institutions. For some of these same governors were former governor of central bank. Some of these, all of us will be lying that, we have been told, but we are now saying we don't agree with it. That's why NEC said, you know what, it's a wonderful bill. And let me tell you from somebody who built businesses, Asheun, the truth of the matter is that there are wonderful things about this bill. One, multiple taxation. Multiple taxation is something that people like us who build businesses don't like. This bill is going to address multiple taxation. Fantastic. That way you are not going to be having these kind of problems. Agricultural equipment, when they are being imported into the country, that will encourage a lot of agricultural thing and industrialization and give peace to the investors when they are coming in. And I can go on and on and on if I had time. So there are so many wonderful things about this bill, and I congratulate Tayo for the initiative of bringing some of those things. But there are questions, and the questions is the reason why we say, why don't us withdraw this bill, review it, sit down, have the town hall meetings, come and discuss with us, let us know. He mentioned that some governors were not cooperating. Definitely not Nasarawa. And I had a joke. Somebody was saying that the governors, since Tinubu had come to power, President Tinubu had come to power, have had improved revenue. They want to know what the government are doing with the revenue. Go to the various states, you will see what they are doing with the revenue. In Nasarawa State, for instance, I have not borrowed money since President Tinubu came to power. Yet, today, I can tell you, I can boast of the 10,000 hectares of land that I'm doing agriculture, all the equipment that I have bought for agriculture, all the payment that we have made from 1996 to 2011 for the workers, so I can mention on and on and on and on.
Yeah, I wish.
So these are the issues.
I wish I knew you were in Abuja. I would have actually paid for
even
your
if
Uber
I was in life
to
here,
this place.
even if I was in life here, I will come on Kekena Pep if I know I was going to sit down and face Atayo and ask him questions to get the answers. You would have invited the people who cried about this, the traditional rulers, the governors. Let them come and then tell you their concerns.
The average Nigerian, but you people are the big Nigerians.
We are the average Nigerians because we are the one at the receiving end.
All right, thank you so much.
And I think that's the point. But it's not a fight, and it's not a regional thing. Yeah. Every Nigerian pays consumption tax. Every Nigerian pays. Right. As Dangote, who was working as the CEO of the company, I will even tell you where the tax of Dangote sugar was paid the most. It's not in Lagos.
Governor Sule, thank you so much. And I appreciate creating this time. And
thank you, sir. Thank you, Tayo, but now it is you are not a lecturer. You are now somebody preparing something that you will take the hit. So it's not a lecturing job anymore.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Governor Abdullahi Sule of Nasarawa State, thank you so much. It's been a very robust conversation. Now, the governors have been brought into the picture, isn't it? So we're going to wrap up now because we do not have time any longer. Let me allow you 30 seconds to respond to Governor Sule and the governors generally.
Yes, to Governor Sule, son I respect a lot. So I do take his feedback very seriously, as well as the whole Governors Forum and NEC and the Northern Governors Forum. We're very happy for the opportunity to continue to engage. The reality is that if you spend months trying to have a meeting with the Governors Forum, and then you get a meeting and they give you 15 minutes, so we're talking about bills with more than 200 provision, 400. So you're going to think about what's most important in that 15 minutes. I can bet you if you had this meeting that we're having today, before this controversy, this hall will not be full. We tried. Some people are not even aware we're trying to engage. Now that the whole country is paying attention, we're happy to repeat those engagements. But I think we should go forward thinking that it is not perfect, it can be better. Making it better does not require withdrawing it. I can bet if you withdraw it, it will never come back. Before we know it, it's 2027 election.
We need to close.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so there are some questions that come. Unfortunately, we may not be able to take them. On Facebook, Ganiat Ogunyemi, my question is, how will the government protect Nigerians from non-state actors that collect taxes forcefully for their own pockets? Ibrahim Usman Sojeku says, how would this bill help address inflation and currency devaluation? Additionally, could it contribute to global economic growth? On Facebook, Adedotun Adeyeye, what is the position of the bill regarding the various local government touts or agents carrying rods and tire rippers on roads to extort money from trucks and vans, including Hilux and Thunders? There is a very senior Nigerian citizen that has sent in this question, which I want us to wrap up with. Let's talk about the complaints by companies about the endemic fraud in the federal and state tax offices. They are accused of defrauding the government by demanding that taxes be split into two and one half paid to them as bribes in order not to be slammed with high taxes, and the larger chunk often goes to them.
Yes, so we have that covered in the bills. We have about 3 framework within the bills. One is tax agents will now be regulated. So you can't just collect returns and go and understate the income. You get into trouble yourself. Number 2, the tax audit process within the Revenue Authority will be driven by data. So it will not be because I don't like your face, or I want to extract money from you, I'll say I'm auditing you. No, we call it risk-based system. It will be flagged by the system. And number 3 is a provision for a whistleblowing framework where the Revenue Authorities can reward someone who comes with intelligence. If I know I can make money, I'll whistleblow on you. So if we keep whistleblowing, we get to a point where people comply. So we have those things covered in those bills to take us forward.
All right. You are all heroes of our democracy because your voices are the real deal. You are making Nigeria the robust we are supposed to be having, and we are having it. And that's why China's Television is taking the lead to have this conversation. And thank you so much immensely for joining us tonight. We sent a very short notice to online, and a lot of you have shown up tonight. Thank you so much. Please, let's put our hands together for all of you who have physically shown up. And for those of you who have shown up online too, I really appreciate your comments. We may not be able to take all of them, but thank you so much to our guests. I invited you on short notice. You came. Honorable Yakubu Dogara, former Speaker of the House of Reps. Thank you so much indeed. Mr. Baba Yusuf, thank you so much. Mr. Chibuzo Michael, Dr. Paul Alaje, and above all, the man with the burden of explanation, Mr. Taiwo Yedele. And look, let me call out one person, and it's Mr. John Momo. I called him and I told him we need to have a conversation, and he yielded. Kudos to China's Television, and congratulations to you and your team. We did it. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching tonight. I'm Seun Kimbaloye. The conversation continues for the interest of our nation. Nigeria will be better for it, and God bless Nigeria. Good night, everyone.